financing. And you know, my feeling is we're in this mess for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons being term limits. Do you think the public understands that part of what's going on now is because of term limits? So, you know, here we're going to go and say to people, okay, extend the term limits of these yo-yos who can't seem to do anything, or, gee, we understand that, you know, this problem is due in part to term limits. Now, how do you sell extending term limits when we're going to finally, at some point, resolve this crisis that we're in?
Well, I think that was the hardest part for us. That's why the House chose 16 years, so you could do 4 in the Senate or 8 in the House. But that's the thing. How do you sell it? I know the Chamber has done, you know, document days pay and things like that, and that's garnered some support. But I think it's such a complex issue. The fact that, you know, if you have to work with someone for the next 12 or 14 years of your life, you're a lot more apt to compromise with them than you are if you only know you're going to be there 2 more years. You know, you don't care about that person. You don't care what they need to get done. There's no compromise. There's none of that. But to explain that in 30 seconds to someone on a TV commercial or radio ad, it's going to be very, very difficult. And I think that was the hardest part for us, to come up with an idea of how to sell it. You know, we had lots of ideas of how to sell it or how to do it, but to do it with the way, you know, politics is done now, it would be very, very difficult. It's quite saddening to me, I guess.
And I would echo Andy's comments. I mean, we went through it firsthand in a class with 28 people, that even in a political science class with mostly political science majors, that the process was incredibly difficult, that you had a lot of people that even didn't understand the issues, and they're political science majors. So if political science majors, people that are going to be perhaps your staff members or even elected officials in a few years, can't understand the issues, I don't know how the average Joe in Marquette or Kalamazoo is going to understand it. And it is difficult, you know, but that's what we decided in the class, that, you know, the voters approved term limits. I don't think you're going to be able to do away with term limits. You probably can reform it in some way. Some of the proposals that have come out, whether it's the Chamber or ours, there's definitely a need. As someone that's worked in the legislature, I do agree that there is definitely a need to increase the length of time of service. But I don't think part-time is the solution. I think in Michigan, we have a very proud tradition of having a competent a legislature and having a high expectation in our public officials, more so than a lot of states. There's a lot of states out there who kind of don't see being in the legislature as that much of an impact on everyday life. And to compare what some people have done, Michigan to North Dakota or Utah or some of these other states where they only meet once every 2 years for 30 or 40 days, you know, in a state with 3 or 4 million people where they're mostly homogeneous, you can't do that. Michigan is a very unique state, and I think we need to have a proficient legislature, but yeah, there is room for reforms.
Now, do you think current legislators should be grandfathered in?
No, I don't think, I can't speak for Andy, but
Was that a discussion that you had?
Yeah, nobody, to my knowledge, supported that. I think that would be wrong to do. I think if we were to do some sort of term limit extension, it would be at the next general election. You couldn't say, oh, well, I've been serving for 2 years now. I want to get my additional 18 years in now that I can serve 20 years. I don't think the people of this state would support that.
Well, we weren't necessarily opposed to the idea that you guys should be tossed out. We were opposed to the idea that, once again, could we inform the people that, you know, we're not just giving these people a free pass, you know. So the idea was to end the term limits and then start the new 20 years, because we didn't think that we could sell the idea, term to it would almost look like we're ending term limits right away, and it would be much harder to get it on the ballot or get it passed. So that was the reason why we didn't do that.
And that was, if I may, one of the areas, the approach that we took in a lot of areas, I should say. Could we convince voters if we had to go to them in real life? One of their proposals that I also developed in the Senate, and a lot of people in our caucus agreed with it, was doing away with the individual boards of control for universities and creating, like a lot of states have, one single board of trustees. either through the state boards of education or a central body. I think there's about 15 other states that use that system, and have them elected on a statewide basis. We thought it was a great idea, but in the end, a lot of people wouldn't understand it because it's too complicated, and that's the approach that we took on a lot of issues. In the end, can we sell this to the people of Michigan? And that's why we only have 2 proposals for you today, because those are the only ones we were able to agree on. And if we had trouble agreeing on some of these proposals, I doubt a lot of people in the state could agree on it.
One last question. I'm not sure if your group discussed this or not, but Rogers Law has come up a million times when we talk to students and your students. Was this something that was discussed, and how do you both of you feel about it?
Well, I would like to see it done away with, but it was discussed and how we could do it. But again, we'd have to put it on the ballot. Could it be done that way? Would it be easier if we did it as a referendum? Which is ultimately what we thought. We didn't think it had a place in the Constitution. We thought it had more of a place as a referendum to repeal it and then move on. So we discussed it like preliminary, because there's one student in our class that's very, very adamant. It's really something he wants to see done, is a revision of that, of the Rogers Law. But we didn't think it had a place in the Constitution. We thought it was more of a referendum. So
Where do you vote?
I vote in Genesee County. I'm in Senator John Gleason's district. So.
And we thought, I think both sides of us agreed, and I think we agreed with Citizens for Michigan too in some areas, that there's a lot of clauses and provisions in our Constitution that don't belong there, that should be enacted by law. I would love to see a very slim and compact state constitution. Our Constitution is better than a lot of states. You go to states like Alabama, and it's ridiculously long. Provisions like Rogers Law don't belong in the Constitution, and if we were to find some solution, it should be by the legislature. I don't support repealing Rogers Law. I think that allowing college students to vote at their school isn't going to result in increased turnout. We make it easy enough as it is through college Republicans, college Democrats, college administrators to get absentee ballots registered to vote. Andy and I have both been there registering people on campus, and if they can't be bothered to fill out the absentee form, almost everybody gets the absentee forms these days. They're not going to vote at school if they can change their registration. I don't think a Rogers Law repeal is actually going to make that big a difference for the people of the state.
Where do you vote then?
Sheboygan County.
Well, the one thing that I'd like to add is that I disagree wholeheartedly with Dennis on this, but I think that the biggest thing is that to get your absentee ballot, you either have to do it in person or you have to vote once to be able to vote. And that's the biggest restriction. I think if that would be a good first step to do away with that, and people would be able to vote absentee. I think we can get a lot of people to vote that way. So that's a good first step. But the fact you just give someone an absentee ballot and they fill it out and send it in, they still have to show up in person, get it from their clerk and hand it in person, or they have to do something in person. And that makes it extremely hard for a lot of students that, especially at campus who are not allowed to have a vehicle, or some students that travel long distances. It makes it very difficult for them to vote. So something needs to be done. Which way you go about it, I'm not sure, but something definitely needs to be done.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Any other final comments from?
I have one question with the cleanup language here. Is there an idea if the January 15th primary stays, would it may go on that ballot?
Well, there's some time constraint issues. The legislation hasn't been introduced yet. There's this other problem in Lansing with the budget, and I think that it's probably best not to mix them. But this committee this is our final hearing, and we will start writing our report and hopefully have that in the first part of October. And then from the report, certainly